All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. And today I want to share with you some tips and tricks about modularization to help you to face that process. So for this reason, this will be not a one-on-one talk about modularization, neither a talk about pro and cons of modularization, because there are already many well-made resources out there, but instead it will be a talk all about approach and process, because I want to share the process that I follow for achieve modularization in my project. But also I want also to share all the failure and the struggle that I faced, because by seeing the failure of other people, it will be helpful for you to avoid to remake them. So first of all, I quickly introduce myself. I'm Marco Gomiero. I'm based in Venice, and I work remotely for Uniware, that is a Berlin-based startup. And these are my social handles if you want to follow me on the web. So let's start. And all the stuff that I'm going to say today came from the experience of modularizing the Uniware Android app. And basically, more or less a year ago, we decided that it was time for building a more stable and more solid architecture for the future after many product interactions. So we decided that it was the right time to modularize our project. But before moving on, I just want to say a few words about modularization. So in this way, we are all on the same page. And first of all, modularization is helpful because it can simplify development, because with the modularization, we have to break down our code into small parts. And also we have to make better choices, because we have to think about communicate in a good way the different part of our project. So it forces us to make better choices. And secondly, with the modularization, we can split responsibilities. So for example, a part of our team can work on a specific module, and another part of the team can work on another part, or even an entire team can work on a specific module, and another team can work on another. So in this way, we have clear responsibilities, and also we can try to minify the merge conflicts. Next, another interesting feature is the fact that if in our company we have multiple products, we can have, for example, a module that is common to all the different applications that we have. So in this case, we don't have to replicate our code in every application, but we can simply share that module. And another things, with modularization, we can use the dynamic feature modules. So we can ship dynamically a feature to our user. So for example, if, for example, we can, we can provide the customer support part of the application on demand. So hopefully the user will not, they will not use that part so much, we hope. And so, and if they need it, they can download it at runtime, so we can save space on the user phone. Another very interesting and important feature is the fact that with modularization we can have faster builds, because Gradle with different modules can build that modules in parallel without and not build an entire module in a serialized way. So it is faster. And finally, with modularization, we can simplify test automation, because if we have to test a particular activity that is buried below different step, we can put that kind of activity in a separate module and then launch that module in a separate application and then test it without moving to different step in our application. All right, so now that we are all on the same page, let's start let's start our journey. And first of all, of course, I suggest you to to read something and to start understanding and studying how to do things before writing code, because of course we cannot write code without knowing what we want to do. So so I want to share with you some resources that really helped me during this process. And first of all, I started to reading the series of articles published by Jerome Molds about modularization, and it is really interesting because it covers different parts, different situations. It provides an example, and it is a very good resource to start with. And next, I suggest to give a look to this talk of the past Google I/O that describes a little bit of architecture in a modularized way. And finally, after reading articles and looking at videos or at talks, the best things to do is look into a real-world example. And so for this thing, I suggest you to give a look to Play. That is an open source application developed by the Android DevRel team, and it is a real good example of material design and also about modularization. And during my research time, I've cloned it, I've tried, I analyzed it, and I was able to clear up my mind on on different topics about modularization. So I suggest you to do so. All right. So after studying, of course, it's time to get our hand dirty. So first of all, the first thing that I suggest you to do is sketching. And because with this activity, you can clear your mind and you can understand what really you need and what you are looking for. So in this case, let's assume that you have this kind of application and you have to modularize it. So in this case, you have to try to understand the high-level concept about it. So for example, in this case, there is a main activity with a bottom navigation view and some fragments and some activity related to profile. So in this case, we can see that we can maybe modularize by taking a first part of all the stuff that is in the home and all the stuff that is related to the profile. So after thinking about that, we can write a simple sketch. And sorry for my bad handwriting, but I'm not so good at it. But in this case, all we have to do is writing and sketching an high level separation. And of course, this has not to be a rigorous division. Of course, this cannot be cannot have all the strict boundaries between code, but it is only to understand how to place things. So in this case, we have a main application that open things. We have a part dedicated to the home, a part dedicated to the profile, and some common libraries, for example, for networking or opening the database and so on. But after that, of course, it's time to decide the type of architecture and to decide the actual boundaries between the different modules. So in this topic, there is not a right way to do things. There are many ways to do. You can, for example, modularize by feature. You can modularize by layer. You can do a mix of things. You can do whatever things that you want. So, for example, if you modularize by feature, you have that a module is a feature, and inside that there are all the stuff related to a specific part of your UI. So, for example, the home, the login, and so on. Otherwise, if you modularize by layer, you can do, if you're using green architecture, you can divide, for example, a module is the entire data layer, another module is the presentation layer, and so on. And in my project, I've decided to modularize by using this kind of architecture. So an architecture with 3 different levels of modules. And in the bottom most level, there are, and the bottommost level is the library level. And in this level, there are only modules that are Android or Java or pure Kotlin libraries. And these kind of modules are specific for a specific task. And so, for example, there is a library for persistence, a library for networking, a library for analytics, and so on and so forth. And in this case, a library never depends on a feature or on the app level. So basically, a library cannot see what is up to them. But of course, a library can depend on another library. Okay, in the feature level, instead, there are only Android libraries. And a feature is a module that contains all the code specific for a specific feature of your application. So, for example, all the code for, as I said before, for the home, for the profile, for the onboarding, for whatever you have in your application. And a feature is an independent module, and it never sees and it never depends on another feature or on the application. But of course, it can depend on one or more libraries, because the libraries are the building blocks of a feature. And finally, in the topmost level, there is only one module, and this is the app module. And this module is our Android application. And basically, the Android application decides at the beginning what to open. So if the user is logged in, we open the home. If is not logged in, we open the onboarding flow, and so on. And the main aim of the app module is to link together all the different modules. And for this reason, it depends on all the other features and on the libraries. So if we come back to our to the example of before, we have to create and we have the app module that is the entry point of the application, and in this case, it decides what to open. And then we have 2 feature modules, the home module and the profile module. So in this way. And this, of course, was a simple example. But let's give a look to a more complicated example. And in this case, it is a more complicated example, but again, a simple example. And in this case, there is an app module with a feature module, and there are 4 libraries. And as you can see, the feature only depends on the libraries, and the libraries, like the UI components, does not depend on other libraries, but the core libraries depend, for example, on the preference library. And so I want to share with you also a more complicated example, and this is a past snapshot of Uniware after modularizing. And as you can see here, there is more, the level that I told you before are more defined. So in this case, there is the app module with a bunch of feature modules that uses some libraries modules. And if you want to create this kind of graph for your application, there is a Gradle script written by Jake Wharton that you can clone it and use it. All right. Now that we have defined our architecture, we have to understand how to navigate between our project. And in a modularized project, we have to deal with two kinds of navigation. We have to deal with navigation within a feature and between features. And for the navigation within a feature, we can easily go with some classic way, let's call it. And this way are explicit intent or the navigation component for if you are using the JetBrains navigation. And because we inside a feature, we know everything of the feature, so we can explicitly retrieve our intent. But for navigation between feature, we don't know the other feature. And so we have to navigate with a different way. And in this case, there are many ways to do it. You can do it with deep links, you can do it with implicit intents, and so on, with a custom navigator, and it depends. And I choose to do with implicit intent. So with implicit intent, I have to, for every activity, I have to define an intent filter and an action that will represent that specific activity. And then I have a library that a navigation library that it is a simple Kotlin object that contains different methods for retrieving the specific intent. So in this way, I have to write only once the intent. And then there is also a private method to make the intent private to the package. All right, so now that we have done navigation, we can start to modularize our project. And for the modularization, there are two different ways. We can do with, the first one is pulling code up. So for pulling code up, we have to move all our existing code from the app module, from the existing app module to a library. And then starting from the library, we extract the code, and so we pull the code up, and we create more libraries, more features, and so on and so forth, until we end the code that there is in the whole app, and we can delete it. And this process is more gentle, because we can go step by step without lot of dependency issues, and so it is more gentle. The other way to do things instead is pulling code down. And in this case, we leave the application as it is in the existing app module. And then we start pulling code down. So we create new libraries and new features from the existing app module until we end the code that there is in the app module. And this approach is more aggressive because it forces us to modularize, and because if we extract something to the bottom, that next we cannot access dependency and stuff on the upmost levels. So since I'm lazy, I've decided to start with pulling code up. So I created a new library. I moved the code into the library. I created a new app module. Then I extracted a new feature from the old app module that is now a library. And then I failed. And the main reason for failing is this. And because we were using the application class as a service locator. So we have all the dependency inside the application class. And of course, this is one of the reasons that we have decided that it was time for a better and stronger architecture. So for this reason, I was not able to, if I move all the code down to the library level, the library level then cannot access the app layer, so I was stuck. So I decided to change strategy and started with pulling code down, even if it was more aggressive. And so I left all the code in existing module, and then I started moving some code to the core modules. So I created a library, then I moved some feature, and so on. I've iterated that process until the entire modularization was over. And with this episode, and these episodes introduce another tip that I want to give you. And this tip is fail, but fail as fast as you can. And yes, because in this process, it is okay to fail. You can do it because you need to understand and to which architecture, which situation is better for you. So you have to try different paths and choose the right one. So don't worry, keep failing, but hopefully you will find a way out to this. So for this reason, I suggest you to allocate a big initial push to start things, to understand how things works, and so you with a big initial chunk, you will be able to get things started. And of course, the next tip is use dependency injection and not do things badly like we were doing before. So while modularizing, I've decided to introduce Dagger, and I decided to use this structure that is described in this article by Marco Solgado. And I will go quickly to describe this kind of architecture, but if you are interested, I suggest you to give a look to the article, because it is very good, very well made with examples and graphs. So in this architecture, I have a core Dagger module that is placed in a common library. And of course, I have a core Dagger component. And in this module, there is all the common dependencies. So for example, the OK HTTP dependency, the access to database, and so on. And next, every feature have their own module. And this module have as a dependency the core module of the core Dagger module. And so for this reason, we need an interface that is implemented by the application. So in this way, we can retrieve the core component from the different modules, because the different the different feature modules cannot see the application. And so for doing this, there is a simple method that uses the application context to retrieve the core component. And then in the different feature activity or fragment or whatever, we can create the component, the Dagger component specific for that feature, by injecting also the core component retrieved with the function that I just showed to you. And I know that this is a lot of boilerplate to do, to write, especially also with test, because with test we need also, for example, some data structure to store and to store the feature component in order to replace them with the fake ones. So there is a lot of things to do, and it's not so beautiful to do it. But hopefully there is, or not hopefully, but fortunately, there is a HILT that let us reduce the boilerplate for Dagger. And with HILT, all we have to do is annotate the application with the HILT Android app annotation, and without any kind of interface retriever and stuff like that. And then we have to install our core Dagger module into the application component, and every feature module must be installed in the activity component or in the specific component that you will use that module. And then in the activity, you have to annotate the activity with the Android entry point, and that's it. Now you can use the inject variables like you've done before without writing so much boilerplate. And also in test, you can swap and replace a feature module with a fake one. And in this case, and I don't show it to you all the code because it will require more time. But if you are interested, there is this commit that I suggest you to give a look. And basically, this is a commit that I've done to move from this kind of from the multi-module Dagger architecture that I showed before to the solution with Dagger. And as you can see, there are a lot of deletions, and so less boilerplate to write. Okay, but the approach that I follow to introduce Dagger is the following one, and I started by leaving some dependency in the application class, and in parallel, I introduced Dagger with some dependency, and next I continued to introduce more and more dependency into Dagger until the application was pretty clean. Okay, so now we need also a smart way to handle our modules. So because we don't want to, every time we create a new module, we don't want to write the main SDK, the compile SDK. It is a boring thing to do, and as you may know, I'm lazy. So to achieve that, we can use the build SRC module, and in that module we can create a Kotlin object with all the different configurations. So we define all the stuff that we want, and then we can use that variables inside the build.gradle script of the project. And in this script, it basically define and set the specific configuration for every Android project. Unfortunately, with the Kotlin Gradle DSL, I wasn't able to use this script, but I came up with another solution. And so I had to define two extension functions in the build.src module. And one extension function is for the app module and one is for the library modules. And inside this function, I set all the stuff. And then I can call that extension function in the Android scope of the different modules. Okay, for handling the dependencies, instead, I've done similar things. So in the build SRC modules, again, there is an object that contains every version codes of the libraries, and an object that contains also the definition of the dependency that we want. So in this case, we can use it in the build.gradle file pretty easily. And again, laziness. And if you have some common dependency between all the modules, I have defined a shared dependency Gradle file, and then I can apply it from the different Gradle script. And for the updates, I suggest you to use this Gradle plugin that exposes to you a task that you can call it, and this task generates a report with the new updates for your dependencies. All right, now it's time to decide that the approach that we want to follow. And again, there is not a right way, and the approach depends on you. You can go with a big sprint of works. You can do small chunks of works. It depends on your project, on your management, on your situation. So the things that I've done and that I think that could be a nice way, a nice solution to go is this one. And so I suggest you to first start, of course, with studying and deciding the architecture. And after that, you can start with preliminaries. So so you can create some common code, some common libraries to be used by the different features. Then you can set up the navigation between the features, so it is done. Then every other things that you have to do to make your project work. And then start by modularizing a single feature. And then after modularizing that feature, ship it, of course, after QA, testing, etc., etc. And so in this way, you can validate the process, you can validate the approach, and you are sure that this solution is right for you. And after that, you can start modularizing more and more feature until you have modularized all your application. And finally, a little bonus, and a tip that I want to give you is to, if you can, create a pet project or a demo application, call whatever you want, because in this case you have to do some research. You have to try different architecture, different things. So you are not sure that what is the right solution for you, and maybe you don't want to mess around with your production application. So by creating a contained or demo project or pet project, you will be able to try different things. And that's what I've done, and all the snippet that you have seen during the talk are taken from that pet project. And it is available on GitHub if you want to look at it. And I don't know if I will finish anytime soon, but whatever. But with this pet project, I was able to try Dagger because before this modularization process, I doesn't know Dagger, or better, I knew what was and a little bit of understanding, but I never tried. So it was difficult to put it inside the production Uniware application. So with this pet project, I was able to try and to break things and to understand by more and more trial how Dagger work, for example. All right, so let's jump to conclusions. And as I said before, for modularization, you have to plan a big initial chunk of works, because you have to understand and to what architecture and what solution is the right for you. So you have to try things to understand. So you need time for do this thing. And the modularization journey is a long and difficult journey, but don't worry, because it it is a journey that totally worth it. The benefits that you can achieve with modularization are many, and they make the sweat worth it. Trust me. And again, during this process, don't be afraid to fail. If 4 days and 4 hours things are not working, don't throw your computer away, but keep pushing. And in this situation, you will have the application that doesn't compile for days. I had a no compiling project for at least a week, and that was scary for me a bit. But yeah, don't be afraid to have this open heart operation on your project. And after that, that's all for me. Thank you very much for the attention. And if you have any kind of question, you can make on Slido, and I'll try to answer right now. Or you can, of course, every time you want to reach me on Twitter and or on my website, and I will more than happy that answer to you. Or you can also write me on the Darker platform if you want. All right, so does modularization by feature require you to have an activity per module? How about in single activity, multiple fragments apps? Okay, this question is in the topic. There are different ways to do modularization for different way to plan your architecture, and I haven't done a project with only one activity, but so I don't exactly know the answer for you, but I think that you can do simply, you can have a single activity in the main module, and then you can have something custom to retrieve your fragment for you. So in this way, I think that that is probably the solution that I will follow if I have to develop a single activity application. Okay, how to generate this visual module graph? Is there a tool you use? Yes, as I told you before, there is a Gradle script from Jake Wharton that you can or copy or apply from the GitHub project that it is hosted, and you can simply use it. If you have lost the link next, I will share my slides so you can retrieve the links easily. What about shared resources in library modules like string durables? Do you duplicate them or always make new modules to share them? Oh, that's a very good question, because it was a failure that I've done, and at the beginning, I've started to, and I've left all the, I've moved some common strings in the core module. And then I left all the different strings in the different modules. And so in this way, I told you, if someone says to me, oh, can you change that string in the home application? Oh, yes, I open the home module and I find directly. But unfortunately, I don't follow that approach, and I migrated all the strings in the core module because we are using a tool for managing the translation in a single place. So we have a server with a custom solution for handling the, not a custom, it's an open source solution that if you want, I will share you. And you hit the download button and it generates your strings. And then I have, every time there is an update, I have a single file and how to move between different modules. I don't know. So I've decided to move everything, all the strings in the core module. And for drawables, otherwise I've done, I have a module, a common module inside it, some common drawables in libraries, and then every feature have its own drawables. Okay, do you have a link to the health migration PR? Yes, it is. Again, there will be on the slides. Were you able to measure any significant build time improvements after moving to a modularized approach? Yes, but I didn't have done scientifically, so I don't have measured before and after, but yes, I seen some improvements. And I think that I'm out of time, so if you have any question, I'll answer you on the platform or whatever you want.